I think that's something that is sometimes overlooked a little bit, or it's easy to overlook this by a lot of entrepreneurs or salespeople, is that it's easy to replace applying what you know with learning more. So what I mean by that is that it's easy to feel productive because you're always learning more and developing your knowledge, even though you could really just be applying the little bit of knowledge that you have and getting a ton of results out of it.
And so mastering it too, I think, is a point.
And mastering it, yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, success is more what you do than what you know.
All right. Hello and welcome. I'm Oliver Wolf from the Wolf Syndicate Coaching, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Ultimate Closer Show, where I take awesome closers out of their productive days to invest their time into you. Now, together, we'll talk about sales theories, philosophies, as well as actionable strategies, tips, and techniques to make sure that you're closing more deals. And so today on our show, we have another very special guest. His name is Guillaume Danis. Guillaume is a director at Northco Services, a multi-million-dollar organization that focuses on professional painting, construction, and roofing. He runs the roofing division specifically, and as such, brings in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of sales per year. Now, on the side, he's also a stock market trader and a fitness enthusiast. As you'll probably see, he's drinking from some kind of a fitness cup right now. And so Guillaume is especially proud and grateful for his beautiful girlfriend with whom he's excited to build a future with. Now, on a more personal note, I've known Guillaume for right around 4 years, and we met through an event, a sort of networking event. It was actually an event that was hosted by myself and my friend. And so originally it was like, hey, shake hands, how's it going? Smile here, business card there, sort of your typical thing. But what quickly became the case as we began to converse a little bit more here and there, I actually ended up taking on Guillaume as my coach. And so Guillaume coached me for about a year as I ran my Scholars at Your Service franchise, painting franchise for my first year. And what was special about that relationship as coach to coachee was we quickly became friends. And that's because we saw eye to eye on a lot of different things and a lot of different ideas. And we actually really helped each other in each other's roles. So even though he was in the coaching role, I was helping him with his and the team and so on and so forth. And so through that collaboration, we developed a friendship that I could call or confidently say Guillaume has become one of my closest and best friends. And so I'm honored to have him on the show and share some of the experience that he has specifically in the industry that he's in. And so, Guillaume, welcome.
Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So just to give you guys a little blooper reel here, we actually started the recording, and I accidentally had him pin the entire time of the intro. So during the intro would have been his face, which would have been hilarious. I might release that, but anyways. So as I was saying before we had to restart, there's a specific reason I actually am excited to have you on the show, because you are in an industry that is relatable to a lot of the audience. So a lot of my audience, we've got sales professionals, we've got coaches, but we also have lots of service providers, such as construction, such as concrete, roofing, all that kind of stuff. And so I like the fact that you're going to likely be able to relate very well to them, because thus far I've had people on the show that are sort of coaches and all that, which of course have amazing value and things to say. But yours I can see is really going to connect and hit home for them. So again, honored to have you on the show, and looking forward to diving in. So first thing, obviously, is let's talk about your story, your sales journey. You know, how did you come to be a successful salesperson, an entrepreneur, the head of a company, really? How did this all happen?
Yeah, for sure. So when I started in sales, I was actually 17 years old. And it's because I joined a network marketing company that was called Organic Gold. And the product we were selling was a coffee with mushrooms in it. So it's kind of funny because that was 8 years ago. And 8 years ago, if you told someone, hey, here's a coffee with some mushrooms in it, people would look at you like, what is this like? Like who are you? Like what is
get me
this?
tripped out.
Yeah, exactly. If you tell that to someone now, you might get actually a pretty positive response. That's how fast times change. But that's how I got started. So I was 17 years old, got started into the network marketing. At that age, I was obviously very young, didn't have a lot of experience, didn't have a lot of work or sales experience. So it's kind of rough. I was starting to learn a little bit more about personal development. And even though that network marketing experience didn't really give me a lot of sales experience per se, it definitely got me started on that personal development path. And as a sales professional, as anything really, where anytime that you're required to produce your own results to bring in your own income, and your income is dependent on your result and not on your time, you have to constantly be developing yourself. You constantly need to try to, always learn more and apply more of what you learn.
Yeah.
So it got me started.
To hit that home, I think it's really because the fact is you are the underlying variable, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're the asset that's producing the return. So you got to keep working on your asset. And so that's what really got me started on that path. And then when I was 18, my first real sales experience was with Scholars at Your Service. So the same company that you joined. My first year when I was 18, I was actually working for my brother who was running a franchise at the time. And the way this came about is that he met one of the general managers and coaches in Quebec City. And that coach told him, hey, we want to open up Ottawa. There's no one in Ottawa. I'm moving to Ottawa. You should move to Ottawa as well. And you should be one of the first franchise managers in Ottawa. And he's like, all right, let's do it. So he moved and then he slept on my couch for a month until he could find a place. And while he was in my place, said, listen, I would like you to help me. What I want to do is I want us to come in and I want us to run the biggest business anyone's seen for a first year rookie. And I want us to have the biggest business in the biggest franchise in the entire business out of like 50 or 60 franchise managers.
And sorry, how old was he at the time?
I was 18, he was 20 or 21.
So again, that young ambition,
yeah.
Obviously.
The young ambition.
We can do everything.
So the role that I took on within his business was marketing manager between January and sort of like June, July. And then also when the summer started, April to August, was also production manager. So I was managing the employees. So he was doing all of the direct sales with the customers, closing deals and everything else. But as a marketing manager, this was my really first real sales experience because what I was doing was door to door and I was closing leads. I was closing people that were interested in getting some painting work done. And that was my first real sales experience because as you know, door to door is really, you need to learn to sell yourself within the first 3 seconds that the customer sees you. Within the first 3 seconds he sees you, the way you're standing, the way you smile, the way you move, the first couple of words that come out of your mouth, that is selling you. Because people, all they want to do when you knock on the door, they just want to come up to the door and slam it back in your face or just not interested, go away. That's what people want to do. So you got to sell them on listening to you.
And I also even want to drive a bit of a point home there too, because you said, with door to door especially, and I definitely agree with that. It takes 3 seconds before the judgment is made. But that really extrapolates to every sales conversation that you have, even if you're about to have a full-on 1 hour appointment or a 15-minute appointment or whatever, that judgment is made in the first few seconds. And if you're not dressed well, looking good, sounding good, smelling good, hopefully.
Exactly.
You're going to be kicked right out the door, or you may not be physically kicked out of the door, but you've been mentally kicked out of the door. Right?
Yeah. It's all uphill from there. If you don't get those first few seconds down, it's definitely all uphill from there. You can get back from it, but it's a different ballgame altogether for sure.
Cool. So you had your first experience, you're doing door to door. This was real sales for you for the first time.
Yeah, that's right. So that was a pretty intense experience, especially because my English wasn't so good either. And we were working in neighborhoods like Rockcliffe and the Glebe and stuff like that. So it was definitely the hardest sales experience I've ever had. That was my first year doing door to door. And then at some point that year as well, there was one episode where my brother Simon couldn't do his quotes for one Saturday because had stayed up a bit too late the night before, and I had to go in and
close the bar. Didn't close the sale though.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, he was not he couldn't do anything. He was like in a coma almost. But anyways,
happened to us all.
Yeah, so I had to go in and do 4 quotes for him. Luckily, I had been in with him a few times before to do some quotes, and it just so happened that I closed 3 out of 4 on the spot that day, and it was just like a really rewarding experience. But I attribute that 100% just because what happened is that every single of those quotes that I did, I was the one that had knocked at the door and gotten the lead. And I had sold myself so hard, and they had loved me so much when I was at the door. Like closing that sale was the easiest thing in the world. And it's really just because those first 3 seconds and that first short, like 60-second interaction with those people got me in. They were,
so that's definitely so. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, what I was going to say is back then I didn't really understand everything, but now when I look back on it, it's because I know that, I had built rapport and it was a qualified lead. And that's why when I came in, it was like, yeah.
Totally. Yeah. You didn't need all the strategy and techniques. You had already sort of these fundamentals. And I want to sort of, again, like hit that home a little bit too, is in that initial contact and such, and the fact that it was you at the door and then you who showed up. And now there's obviously a lack of scaling potential here because you can't do all these steps yourself. But I think what's more important is that you've developed a relationship, and what can happen, and what I think people that on a higher, greater scale can take away from this is people can still build a relationship with your brand. Right? They may not have you, like that person at the door who shows up for the appointment, who shows up for the actual fulfillment, but if you can make sure your team is consistent with the brand, and your brand is very clearly there, right? Like the logo is there, the name is there, and so on and so forth. The people can associate and relate with your brand, which I think is important.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's still a lot of rapport that needs to be built directly between you and the customer, but yeah, for sure. And speaking of rapport, this is kind of, this is interesting because fast forward to a year later, Simon did $180,000 in gross revenue, which was the biggest franchise anyone had ever seen as a rookie manager. It was also the biggest franchise. So we hit our targets. We did what we wanted to accomplish. Yeah. He became general manager. He replaced the coach that was there. And I became franchise manager for my first year. And so it's kind of funny because fast forward to my first quote as a franchise manager with Simon, my brother, as my coach. It was somebody else it was one of my employees that had gotten the lead for me. And that first sale for that year, I actually got kicked out of the quote by the client because
that's
on the other side, like that. Yeah. So that client was completely was the opposite of my personality, and I just wasn't able to build rapport with him. And he was like a very, very strong driver type, and I'm very analytical, and he was very strong driver type. And so we really clashed. And at some point, he was just like, "All right, guys, well, you know what? Like, I'm gonna have to ask you guys to leave now because I got other things that I got to get to, and you can just leave the quote in the mailbox." So that was like
that's awesome. Let's dig into this for a little bit. I think
for sure.
When I have like all these successful people on the show, that's always like raw success stuff, and it's good to dig into these failures because it becomes more relatable, right? So like, how the hell do you come back from that?
I lost that sale. Like that sale was lost
for sure.
But it was just like what happens is whenever you do door to door for so long, and like I had like the year before that when I was working with Simon, we were knocking doors 7 days a week, and I was knocking doors probably 3 hours a day. So I was knocking doors, whatever, Matt, that's like
a savage.
Like a savage. It's a bit over 20 hours every week, and then you do that for like 8 months, right? So you get so much rejection, and you build such a strong mental attitude to just get over rejection that it's just like, okay, well, clearly something didn't work out right. Clearly we're going to have to adjust and do something different. So what is it going to be? Right. So it just meant that I had a lot of work on my plate, and that's what I did. I worked really, really hard. That was an extremely difficult year. I was young. I was still very young. I was 19 years old at the time. It was hard for a 19-year-old as well, because going into that year, I was boasting that I was going to be the best and everything else. And when I first got started that season, I was the absolute worst. I was like within the 10 last on the leaderboard
Mm.
until like 4 months in or something like that. So everyone was like, what is going on? Like, who is this kid? Like, you know, it was just like, whatever. So I went really, really hard on the marketing, had a really hard time with the sales. I couldn't close anything. And it's really at some point when it clicked for me that I just had to really take things a little bit slower. And I was trying to be a little bit too rigid on myself of always having the same process with everyone. And I just slowed down and decided to, you know, let the clients dictate the pace of the rapport building a little bit more, just based on their personality. So I just started adapting my energy to their personality, while keeping the same like presentation and everything else, obviously, right? But I was just like adapting the energy and the speed of the entire sales process and everything else just to their personality. And when I started doing that, that's when I started closing. But it did take me like, I did have like definitely a lot of moments where I was like, okay, is this going to work for me? Am I going to be able to do this? Like, I definitely had a lot of moments where I was really doubting my ability to succeed.
So
but I was
a little bit too is, if you don't mind interjecting, is, so the key thing you said there, I think before a little bit earlier, that I really want to take away is you can't just show up and do the same thing every time, right? There's no such thing as a cookie cutter presentation. It just does not work. And so this is where there's like some conflict with like, well, what about systems and you know, like certain ways to do things and so on and so forth. But you need to create a system that is designed to be flexible, right? And that's
exactly
a really important point that you're making. Now I want to ask you as well is, when you're saying like, oh, hey, I adapted to the client and so on and so forth, like, can you dig into that? Like, what does that mean to adapt to the client? How do you do that? What does that look like? You know, like, what is that?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, there's like, everyone has a different personality and everyone have different things that's really important to them, right? So when it comes down to incorporating that into a sales presentation, then what you really got to look into is you need to, when you're meeting with the client, you basically need to like, you have all of your tools with you to do all of the presentation and everything else. You have all of your tools that you need to sell, but then you need to figure out which of this is most important to the client. And then that's what you focus on more. So when we were in the painting business, a big part of the job was to, a big part of the sales process was to walk around the house with the clients and determine, you know, what was going on, how to fix it, and what it was going to look like. So a lot of people could really attach themselves to the idea, the picture in their head of what their house was going to look like after we were done. And other people just didn't really care about that at all. All they cared about was more the facts of like, how long is it going to last? How durable is it going to be? And how good are you? And how much is it going to cost? So you really just need to like, you need to identify that going into the sale and then adjust. You bring all your tools with you to adapt to anything, but you adjust and you know, I never, out of the 100% of tools that I had or that I had to present, I only ever presented maybe like 25, 30% of everything that I had, but it was tailored to the person that I had in front of me. And the only way to really identify that is when you're going into that sales meeting is in the first like 5 minutes of conversation with the client, which is why it's important to take a few minutes to have that conversation with the client. And if you walk in and the first thing they want to do is just jump right into it, then that's also an indicator of the type of person that you have in front of you. That's probably someone who's a bit more of a driver, probably cares a little bit more about the price and how long it's going to last and how good you are. So it's just about identifying those things and then trying to adjust yourself to,
Cool. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So like identify the needs, identify the personality in combination with those needs. And yeah, typically a certain personality type will have a certain type of needs, but still even at that, there might be a certain personality type that looks at needs differently. So for example, and I'd love if you want to expand, is like, you know, an analytical may care a lot about the time, what's it called? Like how long the paint will last or whatever.
Yeah.
So an analytical will want, okay, well, show me the facts, you know, like exactly how long, what are the tests that have been done? Do you have like, you know, they'll really like dig into that. Whereas a driver, on the other hand, may want that same need, but all he needs to hear from you is, hey, it'll last 15 years. Okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. That's exactly, yeah, you hit it.
Cool. Oh, it looks like you muted yourself there. Okay, gotcha. There you go. You got so excited you had to mute. Cool. Okay, so now we're at your first year. You started out rough. But you really realize that you have to adjust your sales style and probably bring down your ego a little bit, right?
Oh yeah.
So where are we now? What's going on?
So I finished my first year with 130,000 in gross revenue. I was top rookie manager that year, so it was very it's quite high for a first year franchise manager.
Yeah, well, I think the average franchise in this industry is about 70 grand or so. And not only that, but you also, like you said, started at the bottom. Now we here. No, but started at the bottom and got up to literally the top. So that's definitely
Yeah, for sure. So, sure, I'm just going to turn off some notifications here. Okay. So, so it was a really interesting thing because I just took off. And within like a month and a half, I sold 50 grand of work, which was like almost what the average franchise manager sells in a year. But yeah, so I finished the year at 132,000 in sales, very, very successful, profitable business. So I decided to stick around for a second year as a franchise manager. In my second year as a franchise manager, in my first year and in my year working with Simon, I had really like fully exhausted myself, and I never had any time for myself. So in my third year, I decided to set up a business that would work for me so that I'd have a balance. So I had someone working for me to manage all of my employees during summer, and I had someone working for me to manage all of the marketing, and all I would do were sales. So I was working about 20 hours a week from like February until July. And all I was doing for those 20 hours were just sales. So I sold another $150,000 of gross revenue. Very, very enjoyable year. Really got to, it was interesting because I sold that 150 with a lot less leads than I did in my first year. So my closing ratio really like went up a lot higher and everything else. I really was able to take everything that I had learned and just apply it and make a profit out of it. So that was really good.
There's a couple of points to dive into there, actually. Sorry. So you talked about like balance, right? I think this is a very important topic in general, as it's very difficult, especially like, if you're in startup and you're like first, second year, you're probably going to, kill yourself a little bit and such. And I don't know if maybe you have some good tips on this, but, even if someone is in that startup mode or something like that, is there a way or how can they potentially have a little bit more balance in their life? And the reason I really want to emphasize this is a lot of the reason we do this hardcore push of just going all in and working insane hours is because we want to afford freedom or afford some form of freedom, but more specifically, not only just freedom, but also freedom for us and the people that we love. Yet in doing the thing that's trying to get us that freedom, we're losing the people that we love, right? So this paradoxical life that entrepreneurs sometimes have. And I really want to see if we can save some. So again, what do you think are some thoughts that even if you're in that grind, you can still find some balance in your life?
Yeah, for sure. So there's, it's a weird thing about entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs that are male, mostly. You're boosted, you have so much testosterone. You just want to, achieve as high of goals as you can and everything else. But it's important to understand that like we often, as entrepreneurs, we often set our goals and our targets to the absolute maximum of our capacity and a little bit more. So this is not our capacity in this business. It's you take your capacity as a person to operate in life and you maximize all of it. You maximize all of that capacity with your business or sales goal. And then you've got no time left for anything else. Not only do we maximize it, but we always set like that star goal, which is a little bit higher.
Yeah.
So it's important. It starts, in my opinion, it starts in goal setting. So it's easy to just say like, oh yeah, I'd be able to do like $1.5 million in revenue this year. Yeah, I think I might be able to do it. Let's go for it. Yeah, I might be able to do $1.5 million in revenue this year, but that would require me to be 100%, like 100% of myself is just invested in doing only that. But there's no space for life after that, So it's important to dial it back a little bit, because a life that you live where you are 100% focused on your business all the time, there's a very short lifespan to that, because obviously there's other things that that you want to accomplish in life. And it's like, if you only focus on business, then the rest of your life deteriorates, and then you just can't support it anymore. So I think it starts a lot with goal setting. It starts with being able and having the maturity to take a step back and saying, yeah, I could do that. But if I do that, then there's nothing else that's happening in my life. So let's take a step back. Maybe at 1.3 mil, we're still achieving decent results, but I'm giving myself a little bit of breathing room to be able to, keep living and everything else and enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah, I love that.
So I think
I actually haven't heard that before as a answer to that question, and it's cool because it's a more larger scale or more macro scale view of it. Because I feel like a lot of people would answer that with something like, "Hey, this is what you got to do now." But right now, being like sort of January, February, when this show will be released, everyone's sort of set these goals. So I think it's really important to hear this because don't get too ambitious. At least on a business side, you can be ambitious with your life, of which business is a part of it. But again, like you said, don't have your business part of your year's goal outweigh the goals of basically.
Yeah. Life. That really comes out of the mentality and the environment that we live in now. It's really like a push button society where we're so used to instant gratification. So when people get into business, when people get into sales, because it's something where your own effort brings your own results, people want all the big results right away. But they're not respecting their ability to keep producing results. They want to get all the results that they can out of themselves right away, instead of putting time and effort into maintaining themselves so that they can keep producing results in 15, 20, 25 years. And it's sometimes that's something a little bit harder for younger guys to think about as well. But it's a very real fact that if you just push yourself to 100% of your capacity, you're going to last maybe 5-10 years. But then after that, you're definitely going to have to slow down. And it would have been better for you to just push yourself at 85, 90%, pace yourself, and then you can produce results for the next 20, 25 years. And at the end of those 20, 25 years, you've achieved much greater things than if you just did the 5 years and then killed yourself after that, right? So
the fire that burns twice as hot burns twice as fast, right?
Exactly. There you go. That's exactly. So so that's my idea of how people can do that. Yeah, absolutely.
So here we are now. We've finished your second year of franchising, 150, good balance of business and life, which is great. So what happens next?
So then what happened after that is Simon left the business Skulls at Your Service. So I took his place as a coach. And so the sales really continued there because as a coach, you're responsible for hiring the franchise managers. So it's funny because your sales skills really need to evolve because now you're selling on so many different levels. First of all, you need to sell the concept of running your business as a student to students that are interested in potentially joining. So first you need to sell that to them. Then after that, you need to sell those people and coach them on the idea of developing themselves, the idea of pushing themselves, and the idea of going after big targets that are really going to push them out of their comfort zone and challenge them and get them to grow and get them to make some money as well. And then you need to teach them the sales skills that you know. So you need to really step up your game in sales as well, because you got to make sure that you're there to teach them all different aspects and go over everything and all of that with them. So that was my second year. I did a first year as a coach, and that's when I met you. And then we had that fun go at that first year. And then, or was that in my second year? Actually,
it would have been your second year. Yeah. Cause your second year
that was actually my second year. Yeah.
Took over. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I was a coach for 2 years, and it's in my second year that I met you. And then you became a franchise manager for a year. And then after that, you became a coach.
Yeah. So I took your place.
Exactly. And then after I was done coaching with scholars, a guy that I went to school with at high school, who was actually one of Simon's friend, his name is Daniel. He also joined Scholars at Your Service while I was a franchise manager. And then instead of becoming a coach, when I was a coach in my first year, I was coaching him in his third year as a franchise manager. And then after that, in my second year as a coach, he started his own business, which is Northco Services. This is where I am now. So when I was done coaching my second year, he approached me and he said, "Hey, I'd really like to start a roofing division within Northco Services. Would you like to come in and start the roofing division?" So I said, yeah, for sure. So I came in, I partnered with him, and I started the roofing division. And that's where I've been since. And the roofing division of the company, we started off that first year when I came in August. So there was very little to the season left. And we sold and produced 180,000 in gross revenue, I think, within the last 2 months of the year.
Yeah.
And then after that, my first full year discovering that business, learning about this, because I didn't really know anything about roofing. Yeah, we did 480,000 in gross revenue. And then, so that was my first full year. Then our second year, which was 2018, the year that just passed, we did 675,000 in gross revenue in roofing. And now this year we're aiming for 1.1 to 1.2 million.
And that's just for the roofing division alone.
That's just for the roofing division alone. Yeah, there's other divisions to the company. Yeah, it was. It's going to be a big
still
year.
Have a foothold in, because although you're not leading the other divisions, you're still at the table of making sure things are flowing and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really exciting, because even though I'm just focused on roofing, our company really thrives and grows on all of the different divisions. So every division has brought something in the way that it's doing business, or in just the leads and everything else, and in referrals, that has allowed the other divisions to grow as well. So it's really nice. It's a nice, it's almost sort of an ecosystem of our business right now.
Very cool. Very cool. So diving into that a little bit. So you, like you said, you came in on the last 2 months of the season for roofing, yet was still able to bring in $180,000. Can we break that down a little bit? How were you able to do that? I think a lot of people will run a roofing business and maybe do that in their first year entirely, yet you did it in 2 months. So how?
Yeah. So sorry, just getting some more notifications. Yeah. So what happened is we came in and we knew very, very little about it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally spent 2 weeks intensive learning absolutely everything that I could find out about roofing. So that was my first 2 weeks. And even though I did the best I could, I only maybe learned, 30 or 35 or 40% what there is to know. So I still learned less than half of what I should have known. But what I did is I just brought it back down to the basics. So I went after qualified leads. I built rapport. I went after qualified leads. I built rapport, and I banked on what I knew, and I applied what I knew, and I think that's something that is sometimes overlooked a little bit, or it's easy to overlook this by a lot of entrepreneurs or salespeople, is that it's easy to replace applying what you know with learning more. So what I mean by that is that it's easy to feel productive because you're always learning more and developing your knowledge, even though you could really just be applying the little bit of knowledge that you have and getting a ton of results out of it.
And mastering it too, I think, is a point.
And mastering it, yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, success is more what you do than what you know. It's like, I forget who said this, but someone said that it was 90% what you do with the 10% that you know. And so it's easy to always try to learn more. But what if you just took the little bit that you already know and mastered that and then applied it? And start getting results with that and then move on. So that's what I did. So I went back to basics. I took what I knew and I applied it. I went in to create I took a lot of massive action just to get in there and get the ball rolling. And it was really interesting. We did make some mistakes along the way, and we did make a lot of mistakes along the way in our first year running the business as well. And it's part of what it is. But it's again about pacing yourself, right? I went from 480,000 in my first year to 675,000 in my second year. It's not a very big jump from one year to the next.
Monetarily, it seems like it isn't, but I bet on the background.
Exactly. That's the important thing, is that we learned the business that we were in. That's what we did in the last year. And then we're just going to apply. So I focused on learning, and then this coming year, 2019, it's just going to be about applying what I know. and we're going to apply everything that I've learned, and we're going to see what we can go and get with that. So
cool. So I want to again come back a little bit too, because I want to really hit this point home as well. So you said again, when I got started, I took 2 straight weeks to just get to learn, right? And I think this is very important, right? Is you need to be an expert in the industry that you're looking to sell in, right? So there's a combination of 2 things. One, you need to know what you're selling, and then 2, you need to know how to sell. And so you had the basics for both of those, right? You got enough expertise that you could show up and say, this is a shingle. This is, enough that you could speak the language. And then you took fundamentals, truths that are relatable or transferable in anything to do with sales, right? So again,
exactly,
you're always going to need qualified leads if you want to sell properly. You're always going to need to build rapport if you want to sell properly, and so on. So those are things I think that are very important to remember. Now, what I want to ask on that as well is, how do you, and this is a difficult one potentially, but how do you find the line where it's like, okay, I know enough that I can actually get out there now? Because of course there's always this, paralysis by analysis, or being a rocket, right? Paralysis by analysis being, of course, that you need all the information before you do anything, which is quite literally impossible. So you get paralyzed. Or rocket, where it's like you pretty much don't do anything. Like you would have not done any research. You're just like, let's just go do estimates and we'll figure it out. So how did you kind of figure out that balance? Like what told you like, hey, you know what, this is it, I'm ready to go?
That's a very good question. You're right. It is a tough one. It is a tough one. I would have, so here's kind of how it went down, right? When I was sitting down, when I was learning everything that there is to know, I thought I knew about 80% of what there was to know. Okay. I didn't, obviously, but that's what I thought. And so that's the basis that's how I thought, you know what, I know enough now. Because here's the other thing too, is you said earlier, you have to be an expert in your field. You do have to be an expert in your field, but at the same time, you don't always have to be an expert in your field. And when I know what I mean by that is that if you absolutely know everything about it, first of all, it's impossible to know everything about everything. And the other thing is that it is okay to tell a client, it is okay to be honest with a client and say, you know what, this is something that I'm not 100% sure about. I know a lot about everything else, but this is one point that, you know what, I might need to do a little bit more digging into. And this is actually something that will go really, really far in building rapport with a client, because all of a sudden they're like, oh, this person is human?
Exactly, okay. Yeah.
It's
honest with me and truthful and transparent.
Yeah, exactly. And people, 90-95% of the time, people actually appreciate that transparency. And there's a lot to be said about all the other factors that brings in from a sales point, where, if you did require to have a second touch point with a client, then this allows for you to now have a second touch point with a client. But anyways, it's all sales technique. But
it plays.
It plays. But what I was going to say is that, yeah, I felt like I had about 80% of it down. And then I was like, okay, that's enough. Like, that's enough, because at that point, it's you.
Oh, hello.
And what happens is that when you don't know what you don't know, you can be stuck trying to find out, or you can go out there and you can let the real world tell you what you don't know yet. And that is often a much quicker and efficient way to do it, because you're going to go out there and you're going to fail because there's something you don't know. And then you're just going to tell you, yeah, I'm okay. So that's kind of what,
cool. So if I could try to encapsulate that a little bit, there's sort of a sense of like, okay, you got to get to a certain level of comfort that you feel confident enough that you can go out and speak the language a little bit, but using the technique that says, hey, that's something I'm not 100% sure about. Let me, go back. I'll talk to my coach, or I'll do a bit more research on that, or whatever it is. I really want to make sure that I have the best possible answer for you. Being that transparent and open with the client, that's sort of knowing that you can do that, right? And I really want to highlight this. Knowing that you can do that gives you a very strong sense of comfort in your ability to actually take action, because you're right. There's a lot of people that have a misconception where it's like, but I need to know the answer to everything. Yeah. And you never will. Right. And so,
you never will.
Exactly. And so it's really good to keep that strategy technique in mind that, hey, you can be honest with the client and say, you know what, this is something that I don't know at 100% certainty. Let me go and do some research to get that certainty for you. Right. So I think that's a really good point to get people to just get out there and start doing it. And then, like you said, let life tell you what you need to know and what you need to learn. Very cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, so I think we're kind of, we're in the present moment now. We're in the present day. So I guess the last part of your story is you got on this show and you loved it. And but no, to sort of sum up the show, because we are coming up on our time here. I love to ask all of the ultimate closers that make it onto the show, you know, what's an exclusive sales secret that you can share with the audience to guide them on their ultimate closer journey?
So, very, very interesting question. And we're going to take it back to like the very beginning of someone getting into sales and someone getting into business and everything else. So at the end of the day, when you're sitting in front of a client, you have, there's sort of two sides to this. And it's very much so ingrained in the reason why you're there. So when you're selling to someone, when you're selling something, you need to, one, be 100% convinced in the quality of what you're selling, and sell the right thing to the client. Sell what's right for them. Do what's right for the client, not do what's right for you. So this basically validates what you're selling. If you have those 2 points, if you know that what you're selling is quality and that your client needs it, that you're not selling something because you're going to make a bigger commission off of it, but the client doesn't need it. So if you focus on really bringing a solution to the table that the client needs, even if it means that you're making a little bit less money, and you know that you're 100% convinced that what you're selling is quality and that you're able to help your client, if you just walk in with that, people feel it. And it's like, you walk in knowing 100% certainty. I know that I can help you. Here's how I can help you. And this will help you. This will solve your problem. If you just walk in with that and walk in with that attitude, walk in with that certainty, people feel it and people respect that. They respect you as an authority right away.
I love it. And I want to even emphasize the opposite of that now. So very true, right? Like that's what you need to do. Now, if you did the opposite, if you came in, you know, with the intention to sell the biggest thing so you can get the biggest commission and so on and so forth, that becomes a different energy as well. And people can feel that, right? They know,
absolutely.
Intuitively, they'll know, like, is this guy really actually trying to help me out, or is he just trying to help himself out right now? Right. And you will lose more sales than if you do it from a genuine place of seeking to help and serve, which will short term maybe result in, oh, I got a fat commission check, but medium term to long term, you're gonna lose your job, you're gonna lose your clients, you're never gonna get any upsells, you're never gonna get referrals, and you're gonna lose out on sales in general.
I mean, yeah, and just the feeling that you're gonna live with, that, you know, you're
of course, how do you sleep at night?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So I think that's to me, that is the most important thing. Like, you can, if you put all of the sales strategy aside, if you just walk in with that, it's most of it's done.
Nice. Yeah. Cool, man. Love it. So Guillaume, if people want to, you know, reach out to you, talk to you, call you, something like that, or whatever is most convenient for you, what's the best way for someone to get a hold of you and ask you a couple questions?
Add me on Facebook. Send me a message on Facebook.
Yeah, so that's on
Guillaume Facebook, Danis, my name is, right? Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So there's just 2 first names. So yeah.
Very cool. And so, yeah, awesome. So to quickly recap the episode a little bit, on this episode of the Ultimate Closer Show, we had the privilege to dig into some sales theories, philosophies, as well as actionable strategies, tips, and techniques to make sure you're closing more deals here with Guillaume. And more specifically, we talked about things like how to build resilience, right? Incredibly important. The fact that you need to change your sales process and such to the individual, right? Adjust and change to the personality types. There's no such thing as a cookie cutter presentation. Identify needs, right? So important. Not everyone has the same needs. Finding balance in business and in life, or in sales and in life, because if you don't, what's the point of even doing what you're doing? And of course, things like how to get started in sales or just take action in general, right? Finding that, yes, you need to learn, but at the same time, you can actually not know things, and that's okay. So this was a really powerful episode. And, you know, sales is an epic journey. And it's infinitely more difficult without a guide to show you the potholes to avoid and the paths to excellence. So if you are on your sales journey and realize that you do not want to do it alone, then let me be your guide. You know where to find me. And once again, Guillaume, thank you so much for being on the show. And I wish you all an ultimate closer day.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, man.